Are you aiming here, but your shots are going here? We're going to fix that. So I have good news and bad news for you. The good news is it's not your gun. Your gun is fine. You don't need a new gun. The bad news is, well, it's you. And that's okay, because today we're going to talk about trigger control, specifically 3 things that are going to make you a better shooter. Accuracy comes down to pressing the trigger directly to the rear of the gun without disturbing the sights. In other words, move the trigger, but don't move the gun. Now, when it comes to trigger manipulations, there are different ways you can do that. You can slap the trigger, you can roll the trigger, you can prep the trigger. Slapping it is just what it sounds like. You start with your finger off the trigger and you just slap the trigger straight to the rear. One more time. You don't stop for the slack, for the resistance, you just slap it to the rear. Now, rolling the trigger is similar, it's just not quite as violent or as aggressive. You just kind of roll through the resistance. Now, there are few people in the world, the Ben Stagers, the Jerry Mitchellecks, that can take their gun and they can just go crazy slapping that trigger and they can shoot accurately. They can press the trigger to the rear without disturbing the sights while doing so. For most of us mere mortals, a lot of things go wrong between where the trigger starts and where the gun actually goes bang. So what we want to do is prep the trigger, find the place in that space right before the gun goes bang. So I'm going to demonstrate on a double action, single action pistol just for visuals. So you can see this is where the trigger is at rest. There's a little bit of slack, and then you start to pull through. You feel resistance. You pull through until you get right to the very back here, and any more pressure on the trigger, and the shot's going to break. We would call that a fully prepped trigger. And it's the same if you're shooting double action or single action. In single action, it's obviously a much lighter trigger. There's so little take up, and then very little resistance, and it's fully prepped right here, and then a little more resistance, a little more pressure, and the shot breaks. And the concept is the same for a striker fired gun. So every gun is different, so it's very important to find where that spot is on your particular gun, your particular trigger. Find where that spot is just before the shot breaks. Because some guns have 1 wall, some guns have 2 walls, some guns may have 3 walls. Essentially, we want to find the spot between where the trigger is at rest, then we start to press the trigger, there's resistance, and eventually the shot breaks. So we want to move that trigger, that spot. We're going to call that fully prepped, or the final wall, or the spot right before the gun is going to go bang. We want to remove the possibility of error, the possibility of the gun moving while we're pressing through that space. If the shot breaks and then our gun moves, no problem. You're still going to shoot accurate. Your point of aim is going to match your point of impact. However, if you start pressing that trigger and the gun starts to move before it goes bang, well, now you're going to miss your shot. So if the gun moves after the shot breaks, we still hit our target. If the shot moves before our shot breaks, we miss our target. It probably looks very similar because the difference is very slight. But if we prep the trigger first, fire and the gun moves, we're still going to hit our target. I'm exaggerating, obviously, for effect. Versus, as a side note, if you have a 4-pound trigger, you only need to put 4.1 pounds of pressure to break the shot. Minimal effort is required. Now, the second thing we're going to talk about is pressing the trigger straight to the rear of the gun. Now, you may have been taught, like I was, to place the center of your trigger finger pad onto the center of the trigger in order to press it straight back. Now, that's a good place to start, and for some people it's perfect. However, not everybody's hand is the same size. The distance from the trigger to the back of the grip is different on every gun. So you need to find the spot on the trigger where your finger can land and you can press the trigger straight back. That's the principle. What we're trying to avoid is pushing the gun or pulling the gun. We'd rather press the trigger straight back and do not disturb the muzzle. It may help you to visualize telling somebody to come here or trying to touch your nose with your finger as you're presenting your gun. And this is something you can practice at home. Empty your gun, make sure it's not loaded, get into a room, place your gun up next to the wall, and watch your sights. And as you press the trigger straight back, look to see if your sights are moving. If they are, you're inputting pressure into the gun somewhere that's causing it to move. So find the spot where your trigger needs to sit and just practice pressing that trigger straight to the rear. It's all about muscle memory. The third thing, and this is huge, this is probably what's causing your rounds to go low left, is isolating your trigger finger. We have a tendency to move all of our fingers as we're pressing our trigger, and we want to press and move only our trigger finger and not move the rest of those fingers. Watch what happens if I just squeeze the gun with my whole hand. Where does it go? Oh, yeah, it goes down left. So I saved the best for last. Shooting low left, if you're a right handed shooter, can be a combination of things, but 9 times out of 10, people are not isolating their trigger finger. And it's understandable because for most of us, this is not natural. For most of us, this is something we have to learn to do. There's a lot of sympathetic movement that happens in our hands. Once we're trying to move the trigger finger, those other fingers want to move right along with it. And the tighter we grip the gun with our dominant hand, the harder it's going to be to isolate the trigger finger. So relax your shooting hand so that you can easily manipulate your trigger finger. With your support hand, let it do the supporting. You can clamp down with that support hand and try to relax your shooting hand and then focus on isolating the trigger finger. Gun and practice dry firing at home. When you press the trigger, are you squeezing your hand? If so, focus on isolating the trigger finger. Shooting, just like playing a sport or playing an instrument, is muscle memory. So you're going to have to just put in the time, as boring as it is, to sit at home and learn to isolate that trigger finger and press it straight to the rear of the gun until the gun does not move. And that's all I've got, guys. So prep that trigger before you break your shot. Isolate your trigger finger and press it straight to the rear of the gun. You'll be hitting bullseyes and ringing steel before you know it. And if you live in the Atlanta area, come on out for a class. Stay safe, train often, and we'll see you next time. Peace. We're going to talk about 3 things today having to do, so, going to, it's not that hard. It's not that hard, Ellen. It's not that hard.